The combined impact of corruption and decreased spending on infrastructure has dealt its biggest blow on the Philippines' once lofty GDP, says the University of Asia and the Pacific. And the biggest challenge now is getting past what it calls the unknown inflection point of private sector growth. With us now for more is Ronilo Balbieran, economist at the University of Asia and the Pacific. It's good having you back on the program, Ronnie.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Ma'am Cathy.
Okay, so let's for a moment focus and appreciate just how bad, bad the depth of that decline was, because when you gave us that graph, it was really bad. Let's just take a look for a moment and have that appreciation and work with the colors for a moment.
Yeah.
The blue line here represents
the private sector.
Private construction.
Yes,
but
which
really
represents 60% of our entire construction sector, which is around 4 trillion pesos in gross amount.
And that's
then
not enough. The red line is really what concerns you. The 40%, which has really fallen so much.
Yes, the public
that when
infrastructure
you compare
spending.
that with COVID, that pales in comparison with whatever
We were
happened through
sufficiently
the pandemic.
scared when the Q3 of 2025 public infrastructure slowed down to negative 26% growth. That is a pandemic level or pandemic proportion of decrease in government spending on infrastructure. But lo and behold, all of us got surprised when the Q4, the total for October, November, December, got us into a negative 41% spending on public infrastructure.
And why do you think that is? Everybody just got surprised.
Yes, because it's a combination of, number one, the projects cannot be implemented because those are insertions according to our lawmakers. No? And then number two, because of the Mahiya naman kayo statement during the SONA, including as well the investigations, etc. So the whole organization, the biggest of which, DPWH and the OTR, have probably frozen in terms of their procurement activities and their disbursement. They've become extra careful in terms of disbursing money to the contractors.
So is that a good thing or a bad thing? Now that we see that it's really impacted the
On one hand,
statistics
it's a
so-
good thing because we can
so
see
much.
some efforts of reform to clean our organization, our institutions. But at the same time, from the point of view of the economy, which you need badly the circulation of money from spending, production, employment to income back to spending, that's a huge blow to our GDP. And so we have seen the result, no? A negative 41 translated to one of the deepest cut in our GDP performance, so down to 3% in the fourth quarter. We were just talking about the 3.8% depressing forecast of BSP for fourth quarter, and we were trying to cheer us up. And then, lo and behold, the actual number was way, way below the 3.8.
Nobody got it right.
Nobody got it right
It
in
turned
this
out that
country.
everybody was a little bit more optimistic. But let's consider for a moment, Ronnie, apples for apples comparison and go back to the time when we had that reenacted budget. And I wanted to go back to that chart because it's also an interesting interplay that we've seen
Yes.
between private construction and public infra spending. It
Yes.
did fall. It fell by much
Yes.
because a reenacted budget means delays in everything.
Yes, delays in everything, and you cannot actually
infrastructure
actually
spend.
roll out
You
an
can't.
infrastructure project that was actually rolled out and procured from the previous year. And so during 2018, 2019, so we have that huge decline in our infrastructure spending. No? So and therefore
And how long did that take? I mean, if we were to take that as an historical maybe example, because what's happened then was because of the pork barrel insertions
Yes,
that
yes.
people were concerned about. The legislators just wanted not to approve the
Yes.
budget
Yes.
and just reenact it.
Reenacted.
How
the
long did it
fastest
take?
the fastest you can actually convince the private sector, and that's why I was sharing here the inflection point of the private sector, because of that they are actually following 1 to 2 quarters of government infrastructure action. Because the government will try to open up the rural areas with the rural roads, etc., etc. And the next thing you know, the real estate players, the construction players will be there in the rural areas trying to purchase land, put up condos, malls, houses, etc. So that is most important when the 60% gets inspired with the action of the 40%, which is the
Inspired.
government.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's a very subjective term.
Yes.
So
And
is
so
it a process then? I mean, private sector now
two,
is
the
forced to
fastest
wait.
is 2 quarters. No, so now we've seen three negative performance of negative quarters of performance by the public infrastructure spending. So -8, -26, and then -41 or -42. And so as a result of that, you see the private construction spending slowed down from double-digit growth rate of 14% in the middle of the corruption scandal, double-digit growth of private construction, and then it slowed down to 8%, single-digit, 8% for the fourth quarter. My fear is that it will actually touch zero to negative, the private construction, for the first quarter, because there's no action yet from the government. And so therefore, we do not, now I'm joining BSP in their depressing forecast. No? So in the first quarter, we might actually see a GDP growth of 3% or less, because the private construction might actually dip to negative.
And what sort of metrics would contribute to that?
Because you don't have all this
fall to the negative.
leadership infrastructure spending that happens in the rural areas, where the private sector actually bet their investments on faster development at the rural areas. So you will actually contract that. And so, for example, the malls that are being built or ongoing projects of malls, commercial centers, offices around the country will be paused or will be slowed down. Because, wait a minute, the projections for our economic growth, the projections for our revenue forecast, et cetera, might actually be pushed to 1 to 2 years later. So we might as well not accelerate, not have overtime, so not accelerate our spending. So your construction, private sector side will start to slow down. We will see that inflection going back again for the construction if we see at least 2 quarters of positive growth, or at least a turnaround, an inflection point from the side of the government. So at least -41. If we go back to -20, -8 towards the projection of double-digit growth by the government, that's when we will see the private sector will start turning around and going to the double-digit growth rate that we have
Well,
seen.
could it be possible that private sector growth will grow anyway and carry on? Because when I look at this chart, not all the time that they have to follow where public infrastructure is going, they've managed to stay steady or
Yes.
even go up at times when public infrastructure spendings come down.
For 2 quarters.
And when was that?
So that was the 2019, when the government actually had 2 quarters of negative spending because of the delay in enacting the budget. And so we had re-enacted budget. And then, for example, if we rewind all the way to the Pinoy's time, 2011. No? So remember, that was actually a worse performance for government spending. That was -62% for public. But that was a different story, because that was the tuwid na daan procurement. So everybody was scared to get dirty on the procurement, and then that was addressed by the disbursement acceleration program that later on was declared half unconstitutional. No? But it actually turned around from -62 to double-digit positive growth. And so the private sector was able to recover 2 to 3 quarters after.
So isn't that a cycle then? I
Yes.
mean, we've just gone through
I've been
a cycle
following
there
the
of being
public
scared. I know, you
public
have.
and private
And
2 quarters.
very rightfully so. People get scared, they stop spending, and then they spend again, and then suddenly we find something anomalous, and here
And
we are.
rightly so for
How can we break that cycle then, Ronnie?
the government. I hope Secretary Vince Dizon will succeed in terms of prioritizing the Maharlika Highway. That's important for 2 reasons. No? It's important. Now, Maharlika Highway, or the N1, no? So from Luzon all the way to Zamboanga. No? So that's the backbone of our economy. So that's very important. The entire logistics transport sector of our country rests on that particular backbone. But number 2, you don't need right-of-way payments, because the carriageway width is there. So you just need to upgrade it. So we won't be facing so much right-of-way problems because you just need to upgrade the existing carriageway. So that's important for disbursement because you don't encounter right-of-way acquisition delays.
So these are low-hanging fruits.
These are
that
low-hanging
can be
fruits
done
that can be
while
done
we
for
wait
the first quarter.
catch-up for the first
Yes,
quarter.
so spend them all for the first quarter and the second quarter. That is our only chance to actually turn around our GDP sad story to a positive one towards the full year of 2026.
Where does that leave monetary policy now that we're coming up to the decision on February 19th? Will he or won't he? Or more pointedly, should he or should he not cut rates on February 19th?
From my vantage point, from the vantage point of the university, they should cut at least 50 basis points.
In one go?
In one go.
Isn't that going to
for
cause
next
panic?
week. For those, no, we're already panicking. The GDP has already gone down to as low as the 2011 level, at 3% of fourth quarter. So gone are the days that we have actually performed 6.6% for the last 10 years before this administration. We were already forecasting 8%. And now what? We have a 5%. So now it's actually very dim to actually see a 6% growth for 2026. The only way you can actually achieve 5 or more than 5% for the entire year of 2026 is you can actually have the exchange rate hit more than 60 so that you can actually now distribute more purchasing power for the OFW families and their recipients here in the Philippines, and then that will actually give more spending. So if you complement that with lower interest rates, especially for the amortization for the houses that they are paying for, our middle class, lower middle class who have actually amortization in their banks, 50 basis points that will translate to lower lending rates will give enough purchasing power to be shifted from those house amortizations to actually purchasing power for our goods and
And that's
services.
what really matters because it comes right down to the money we can spend and save at home or
Yes.
maybe even invest. As a final point, where then will growth be by the end of the year, given if, for instance, the BSP does cut by 50 and that catch-up happens in 2 quarters on
First
the
of
fiscal
all,
side?
because they are very conservative, understandably so. They have been very conservative. They might cut only at 25 basis points. So, but look, we start before the pandemic. We have 3%.
So we're going to be 4?
What are they worried
4%?
about? So,
I mean, what are you forecasting?
So our quote-unquote dismal muddling through scenario is 4.2% with a negative bias. No? So it may actually be lower depending on the disbursement reports of the national government for the months of December,
Okay.
January, and February.
So much caveats
4.2?
there. But we'll leave it at that. And at
But
least it's not-
5.2
okay.
can easily be achieved
All right, a 1.
because the exchange rate is actually toying with the idea with 60, 61.
Got that. I
That
can
should
stay
be good.
optimistic then
Yes.
for 5%. Thank you, Ronnie. I appreciate the analysis and insights there. Ronnie Balbieran of UANP.